Good day everyone, Tabang here. Welcome to another episode of Careers Podcast for SA. Today we won't be necessarily focusing on a career, which in this case is finance, but we'll also be talking a little bit about working abroad. And I think the best person to speak about that is our guest today, Maureen Lwanga. Hi Maureen.
Hi Tabang, good to be here and hi to your viewers.
Awesome, thank you very much for joining us. I think first and foremost, just to get up to speed, would you tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, so I was born in the northwest in Mafikeng. I went to Girls High, Potchefstroom Girls, and then I did my studies, so to become a CA at University of Cape Town. I then took a year last year off to do my MBA, so I went to a school in France called INSEAD, and then I did an exchange to Kellogg in the US. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey.
Yeah, I think on that journey, from a professional perspective, can you run us through that journey? Because I think that's the topic that we want to really touch on today.
Okay, perfect. So post-university, I went to Deloitte to complete my articles. It was 3 years. That was super exciting. It was like speed dating, the way I see it, because every 3 months you change a company. You'd get to meet the CEOs, the CFOs. I thought it was one of the biggest opportunities, or one of the few careers where you get in the door and you can be super junior and you can actually meet somebody of gravitas, so a CEO, a CFO, and working in audit. So after I did the 3 years, I liked the strategy part a lot. I didn't quite like the spend the rest of your time digging through data to validate what it is that they already know, right? So yeah. I always said the CA or the auditor just validates there was a party. Like they all had a party, I come in and I say, okay, there's 3 cans, there was a pizza box, validation, this was the party. So I decided at that point in time, let me try pivot into an area where I can be more dynamic, where I can look more at strategy, helping design the business processes going forward. And Anglo-American had a leadership development program, BLAST, so I decided to join that. And that was amazing. It was the first career that gave me an opportunity to work abroad. So I started in business improvement. It was interesting there because since we currently have an operation in mind, how can we then optimize it? So that was the question. So talking to different people in the BUs to try and optimize the mine. The second question, I went to then government relations in Brazil. And the question was, if you know that this is the business as it stands, and there's always these external forces, be it government, be it, I don't know, political forces, how can you make sure that regardless of the players, that the business will still operate? So we're trying to get our licenses to operate. So there's a lot of talking to governments, a lot of trying to, at that point in time they were doing an impeachment, a lot of trying to make sure that whoever comes in, Anglo can still get their licenses to operate. So I did that for 18 months, and then I moved back to South Africa and I worked in business development in Platinum. It was more of mergers and acquisitions. So the question here was, if we know commodity prices are a given, and commodity prices at the time were tanking, how can we make sure that we create more value for the business? Sometimes we were selling mines, other times we were looking at byproducts. So in this case, I was looking at chrome. Can we get more value from what we're already doing, from an existing process? And then how do you monetize that? At the end of that 2017, I then got a call from my team in Brazil, and they were doing this exciting project in Guinea, West Africa, and they said, won't you want to come and join us and sort of do what you did before, but this time it will be without the corporate training wheel. So corporate does give you a lot of structure, there's a lot of processes, so it's very difficult for you to make an error. In Guinea, when it's like outback, it's the real deal, how do you make sure that you can still create momentum, get a project going without all of the training wheels that corporate gives you? So I was there for a year. It was amazing also, but super challenging in Guinea, and I did the project management office for a year there. That was 2018, and then last year I took the year off to study, almost solidify what I've been doing, because it's a lot of different things, but it's still been strategy in different spaces. And then this year I decided to do my own thing and open my own entrepreneurship company where I'm working with SMEs, trying to help them debottleneck their processes in one case, alternatively helping them look at strategy. So now that they know this is existing scenarios, how can we do more? How can we grow? What else should we be looking at?
Look, I think without a doubt there's so much to unpack there. So we'll definitely have to have another episode where we just speak specifically to, the professional responsibilities that you've had over the years. But I think what I'm going to pull out from, everything you've just said now is you've mentioned Brazil, you've mentioned Guinea, you've mentioned France with the studying stint. And I want to know, for a South African who doesn't really picture themselves, going out and conquering and working there, especially when you consider things like language and culture, what's your advice to someone like that? What mindset should they be in before they even think of doing something like that?
Okay, so I think it's a constant curiosity helps, and I also think it helps if you. Because what I think people fall short of is when they have an expectation, like when I get to Brazil, it's going to be this massive carnival.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to France and there's going to be this Eiffel Tower and it's going to be romantic. And they have these expectations, but disappointment sets in when reality is very different to that. So if you're going to go to these places, do a lot of homework, talk to people who've lived there, listen to books, read books, listen to music, etc., so that you get familiar with the environment. That helps a lot, because then that reduces that gap between reality and expectation. And then I think the next thing you can do is, where there's a language barrier, or where there's a different language, start immersing yourself in that language so that it's not so much of a culture shock. I think that was some of the things that in Brazil I did try beforehand, learn Portuguese, but I didn't expect it to be so. Like, English is super remote. Less than 10% of the people speak English. So I didn't expect no one to get me. And imagine, I just want to order a pizza and they're here asking with extra cheese, with this topping. I'm just like, just do it. Like, here's my money, whatever can fit in that. And that creates a lot of challenges in the beginning when I could have been enjoying it, because I'm still trying to reduce this learning curve. That was the biggest challenge. So I think my biggest recommendation is, wherever you want to go, just do the homework so that when you get there, you're better prepared. It doesn't mean that you won't be surprised. You'll still be surprised, but at least the gap will not be as great as if you just launch yourself into the unknown. So that's my recommendation.
And I suppose another thing is, a lot of people, especially within South Africa, believe that you're raised by a village, you're raised by a community. And I think throughout life, we keep that, those relationships going. So when you've built that support structure and you've got family and you've got friends, how easy is it to leave it all behind and go be an individual, thousands of kilometers away, where you can't just have someone come check on you, whether you're sick, happy, sad? How easy was it for you? And do you think that it's something that people should look to do?
So the support structure is very important, and I think for me that was the biggest challenge when I left. I didn't realize, you take things for granted, like even just doing my hair. I went into spaces where my hair texture was not known to people there. So I think what was for me important was then to be deliberate. Right now, if we're in South Africa, we take for granted that our mates are sort of close by. We just call them up and then we arrive at their homes. Now I'd have to be more deliberate, and there was time zones in most of the cases. I had to call them up and say, or send a meeting request and say, actually, I'm going to be intentional about this friendship. We're going to meet on Saturday at this time. Can we do this? And then with my family, also just being intentional about that. So that was the support unit for the ones that I did hold dearly. And then I think for the other things that I missed. So if I, for example, have a church crew and now trying to replicate that in a different country is hard, but still trying to look for it. If you know that spirituality is big for you and you don't have that at all in a different country, you start realizing that something's eating away at you. So for me, it was important to then, when I get there, try to find these small social circles that are similar to the things that energized me, so that I don't feel like I'm completely lost. So if it's even your hairstylist, like trying to find who can do my hair to make sure that I'm not completely lost in that world. And then where I can, leaning on different people. So if I know that in South Africa I get so busy that on Friday I'll stay in and watch Netflix and chill, I can't do that abroad, because I lose the opportunity to create those networks. And then come Saturday, I don't know where to go, and then I feel like, feeling alone and feeling like guilty because I didn't develop these networks. So I think very early on, especially when I start and move into a new place, the last thing I do is cable. I wait for 2 or 3 months before I get that, so that I'm not comfortable at home. I know that home should not necessarily be a place I go to with option. I should rather just do other things, meet people, and then when I'm comfortable, I'll come back to home. So if you know that you're going to be moving around a lot, rather don't stay at home, because then the anxiety builds up, and then you start feeling alone, and then you start saying, well, it was me, I decided this thing, is it the right thing for me? And it could be in this time, like it's really good for you, it's just that you haven't planned your life accordingly.
Yeah. So what would you say was your biggest, and I'll phrase it two ways, either a cultural shock that you've experienced with all your migrating, or what's the, what you found was your biggest stumbling block as you were going through it? I know the question is not exactly the same, but in some instances it's the same thing. I just want to see if it's the case for you.
Okay, so, and I'll speak about the different regions. In Brazil, the biggest shock here was I knew that the Latin American people are warm, but I didn't expect them to be so embracing. So it was day one, my boss met me, he's like hugging me, giving me 2 kisses on the cheek. I mean, my South African boss, if we just said high five, we had done a lot of engagements for the week. So it was trying to maneuver through this thing where in South Africa would be saying it's personal space, or when you have meetings, they really do care about the whole person. I would try and book a meeting for 30 minutes thinking, in my mindset, I'm respecting their time. But if I'm trying to squeeze something into 30 minutes, they will see disrespectful, because I never asked them about their kids, never asked them about their soccer, how it went. And so I had to build meetings to accommodate that. So a 30-minute meeting would be an hour long, knowing that we're going to talk about that. So I think that was very different for the South American space. When I went to Guinea, it's a very Muslim-orientated country, which meant that when I was engaging with my male colleagues, they couldn't really engage with me in a way that, because they had a different view of women, and so they preferred personal distance. I could shake the women's hands, but the men would just probably like stand there with their hands behind their back. I would walk into a kitchen and then they would probably walk out of respect. So I had to be more conscious about the way I move, because I know I would disrupt, or at least I know that they'd be aware of my steps. So even when I went to the gym, it was the first time I gymmed with like long sleeves, because it was trying to be more respectful for them. Otherwise they are uncomfortable. So I think one of the other things you were mentioning about the stumbling block or the mindset shift is be aware that you are the guest in their home. It's not as if now they need to change their whole lifestyle to accommodate you. In most places they will be willing to do that. The Brazilians tried as much as possible, but the language barrier was there, so I forced myself to learn English. The Ghanaian people also tried as much as possible, but I was dealing with something that was inherited over years and centuries. And then when I was in the US, another interesting thing there is they're super informal. Like somebody would be like, come home, meet Jane. I'm thinking, who's Jane? It's a sister. Meanwhile, meet Jane is their mother. I'm like, I don't even know what to call her. I'm like, Mom Jane, like, what can I call you? And she's like, I'm just Jane. And for them, their name is a form of respect. They don't see it as disrespectful, which is what we see in Africa. Like we try and crutch to anybody above you, some form of respectful way of accounting to them, and for them they don't care about that. And I guess in France the shock there is the guys literally work to live. So what this means is on Sunday all stores will be closed. When I get back from school, all the stores were closed. When I tried to run errands from 12 till 2, everything was closed. And they really do respect that when we're at work all together, and when I'm not at work, no one's at work. And for me, I was like, but then how'd you guys hustle? Like the things are going crazy, but they know that they won't have their child at home wondering if they've seen their faces. They know that they put family first, and everybody somewhat knows that. So even when you end work at 5 or 6, I have to be mindful, like don't make meetings drag on, because they'll be there to show you. They'll be like, okay, we'll talk tomorrow, and I'll be like, but we haven't finished. So it was just a different way of noticing that for them, they wholeheartedly work just to live, and not the other way around. So here we could be working our life off, and then 10 years later, we'll be like, that last decade, I didn't live, didn't see it. So yeah.
No, that's very interesting. I would like you to also touch on South Africa, because I think the transition from being a student to the workplace also has its own adjustments. I think there's things that we sometimes don't expect, and then when you get into the workplace and realize, ooh, this is what it's like to work, it can also act as, a stumbling block within your own hometown. So I want to know from you, when you first got into the workspace in South Africa, whether it's the first time when you did it or when you came back from abroad, what are some of the things that you feel you need to adjust to when stepping into the South African office?
So I think that some of the places, and maybe it'll just speak more to my engagement with certain industries. So I found that mining is very hierarchical.
Yeah.
Like even if you have a good idea, I can't knock on the CEO's door and be like, I have this great idea, won't you hear me out? You literally have to work the chain of command. And I also found in South Africa, whilst they have all these great talent and all these people who are doing great things, the people at the top don't listen to them. So when you get there and you're energetic, they'll be like, but you know, I've been living here, I've been doing this for more years than you've been alive. There's nothing broken. And I'm saying, yeah, but you've done this for 30 odd years. There's something new, you know, maybe we should try to do something new.
Yeah.
And we tend to wait until the thing is absolutely broken down before we have motivation to try and change things.
Yeah.
So I found, and maybe it's just because of the particular industry, it was much harder to change processes, systems, especially as a young person. I think probably when you grow older, I don't know if they just respect age more, and then you can say something, they'll give you benefit of the doubt and they'll validate that. But I think it's an opportunity that perhaps corporates miss out on, because they have to wait until the end, and sometimes they end up losing talent as a result of that, because also we have a different DNA, the youth. Like they're not going to do what our parents did, where they said, I'll stay with one company and I'll work there all my 50 years. We're trying to be part of a company where we are partnering, and if they're not going to partner with our ideas, you see people just tapping out mentally and not just going there just for the paycheck, or their worst case scenario, or to leave. So I think that was my challenge, either coming from university and being full of energy and they're like, actually pause, this is how we do things around here, or trying to be full of energy, and if I did get somebody to listen to me, they'll be like, actually, you can't speak to the CEO. Even your own boss will be like sitting there like, why are we talking to the CEO? Like, what you were saying about me, now people are going to think so badly about me, I think I can't control my staff. And you start learning these bad behaviors. And then when I went abroad, I could see that you start noticing these differences, because when I came out of university, I took it as normal. When I went somewhere else, I was like, but this isn't normal. Why do we do that? So.
Yeah, I think your take on that takes me back to something that, you know, at my particular company we talk about quite a bit, and that's you know, firstly, South Africa is a very experience-driven place, so you know they're always looking for experience, even just to get in the door. And I think a lot of young people complain about, you know, even for learnership, sometimes they ask for experience, which doesn't make sense, because that should be opportunity to get said experience. And I think what normally happens is that over time you adjust to the work environment and your thinking becomes like the people that are your bosses. So if you take 5 years to be taken seriously, by the time they're willing to listen, normally your mindset has changed and it's no longer fresh, but it's exactly aligned to what, you know, they would want to do, or what they've been wanting to do the whole time you were there. So a lot of the time these fresh ideas, new trajectories never get to happen, because they just wait too long for a person to get to that area where they feel like you're worth listening to. But in some instances that also just means now you speak like we do, therefore you must know what you're speaking about. Yeah, but I think you know, that covers quite a lot, and that covers exactly what I wanted to get out of that, you know, international exposure to what's happening. But I want to know, you know, for yourself on a more personal level. I mean, you've mentioned the new company that you've just started. You mentioned that, you know, you've just done your MBA as well. With all that happening, is there anything else that you're passionate about, you know, outside this professional setting of yours?
So I think my career was a function of the things I do like. So I really like to travel. I think COVID took a blow on me, because it was the one thing that clipped my wings and said, okay, now that you're in one country for a while, how can you make this work? So I'm an avid traveler. I do like to go traveling. I also think I'm curious about a lot of things, and I'm conscious that the world even when I finished university, I feel that was when like Zuckerberg came out with Facebook, and then you have Instagram, then you have Airbnb. So I'm always interested in what are the models that are shaping the world today. So I've been fortunate that now that COVID has happened, a lot of people are stuck at home and they're doing these almost like coffee chats. They've been advertising on LinkedIn, like if you want to talk to me, talk to me. So I've been like clicking everybody and just to pick their brains, to see what people are thinking about, because I think that's going to be the new way of trying to be relevant. You know, we have podcasts, which is really good, and then you have books, which is also really good, but experiential learning, and I think travel is what gave me experiential learning. Like how else can you absorb information. So my passion now is trying to talk to people and try to see nuggets from their minds, and then where possible adjusting myself and shifting that way.
Yeah, and I think this next question, try not to take it politically, to avoid us getting into touchy ground, but we often hear that the more you travel, the more you're shaped by the world around you, and the more your mindset changes. Do you think South Africans would learn more, benefit more from traveling? And if so, what sort of learning would that be if we all just, stepped out of South Africa a bit more to see what else is happening out there?
So I think traveling is a proxy for anything new, right? I think for as long as you're constantly pushing yourself out of the comfort zone, you will always be then more relevant in conversations. I think there's a risk to following something because it's been the status quo, and I want people to then ask themselves, why do they follow certain political parties? What do they give them today that they didn't know that our parents got? So that's one type of learning engagement. Another thing is, school versus, technicons, or having blue collar versus white collar. Why do we remunerate CEOs and not plumbers? We still need a society where we have plumbers, bakers, all these blue collar workers that are adding to it. And I think travel gives you an instant burst to being in these circles where you're completely removed from your comfort zone and there's no way out. So I think that's why I like travel, but I don't think you can also recreate that in your own spaces, right? You can break away from your group of friends that you traditionally go out to, I don't know, a particular spot with, and try to see what other people are doing, and then see, why is it that I'm different to them? What made me feel a little bit of friction? Ask yourself these types of things, because I think that's the way you can grow, because I do believe that the CEO, the executives, or the next generation will be one who can adapt quickly. I think they talk about AI today and how robots are going to take over jobs, but they can never take over the human touch. And I think the ability to travel makes you expanded so that you can connect better with people. But connecting can be in different ways, either educational wise, or asking yourself things that you take as status quo. Why is it such like that? And challenging yourself. So I think we have travel, which is just a proxy for anything that you can use to grow yourself. If you're reading if you listen just to hip hop, try classic and then find out why, because it came from a different generation, but it doesn't mean there's no value. And using those ways to constantly ask yourself and grow yourself, I think that would be my take to the next person, because I know traveling is expensive. The only reason I got my first ticket was Anglo supported me, and from there I started realizing actually this thing can be not too pricey if I organize my lifestyle accordingly, if I don't have too many flashy things and I save up like this, and therefore the momentum came. But yeah, I know that not everybody has the privilege that I did, and still doesn't prevent them from engaging. Like even now, LinkedIn talks, people are out there saying, talk to me, reach out to me, go out, have that conversation, ask those difficult questions, and then you'll learn, I guess, from that. You'll expand your mindset, you'll grow personally more.
Yeah. So when people hear the name Maureen Lwanga, what else should they think of outside everything that we've just spoken about? Is there anything else that you haven't mentioned about yourself that you think would best describe the kind of person that you are?
So I'm a people's person, believe it or not, even though it hasn't been demonstrated yet. I do like talking to people. I dabble in humor. I definitely like to tell a joke. I like to connect with people. And I think I'm curious. I think that's something that I've always said here, but other than that, I think I'm a people's person. I like to think that I'm risk averse. I think, please support my business, y'all. But if it doesn't work, I'm a person who's experimenting. So if I'll put my all into this business, if it doesn't go right, at least I'll have it in my back pocket that I tried it. And I know my biggest thing is I want to live through life so that come whenever the Lord calls me up, I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to say what happens if I went left. I'll take it, I'll pursue it for as long as I have the energy, the effort. And if it doesn't go out, I think I'll be better because I would have learned from it. So I'm a student of life, hey.
Yeah, well, I think with that actually, before we officially call it a day, do you want to again just run through what your business is and what sort of people should be looking to reach out to?
Okay, so It's currently, I'm working with small and medium micro enterprises, and what I'm trying to do is help them find new ways to market in certain instance. So COVID closed off the traditional forms, so there'll be foot traffic going into malls. Currently there's no longer that, so I'm also doing e-commerce, but the idea is, how do I access different markets? How do I grow? And I sit there with the entrepreneurs and trying to develop these ways to markets. Alternatively, I also look at their current operations and I say, does this still make sense? You know, does it still make sense to have this division when the people that you're servicing is such a small fraction versus your costs? And I guess it's similar to somebody who, an independent comes into your house. You go, like you've been in COVID for so long, we all think we haven't picked up weight. We go see our parents, they're the first one to notice it. So as soon as you have an independent look at your books or an independent look at your strategy, they can pick it up much more easier. And I'm pretty much the independent that helps the business see their business in a different way. Because currently, otherwise, you look in the mirror every day and they think they're doing a good job.